Ladies and gentlemen, there's a moment in life when everything changes, not because someone gave us permission, not because the world finally noticed our potential, but because we decided to take control. Transformation doesn't begin in the world around us. It begins within. If you want to change your life truly, deeply, instantly start by taking control of these 5 things. You don't need more time, more talent, or more money. You need more intention. Let's begin. How you begin anything determines how far you'll go with it. And that includes your day. Your morning is not just the start of another 24 hours, it's the foundation of everything you're about to build. The truth is, you don't stumble into success, joy, or peace by accident. You create it intentionally, one small decision at a time. And your very first decision each day, that sets the tone for all the ones that follow. Imagine this. Your alarm rings. You reach for your phone. Within seconds, you're pulled into a digital hurricane, emails demanding attention, social media begging for approval, news painting the world in shades of chaos. Before your feet even touch the ground, you've surrendered your attention, your emotions, your direction. You've handed over control to the world. And that's how most people live not out of laziness or apathy, but out of habit. And habits shape destinies. But what if, instead of reacting, you led? What if the first few moments of your day weren't hijacked by noise, but designed with purpose? There's a reason the most elite performance athletes, military leaders, entrepreneurs, start their mornings the same way, every day. Not because they love routine, but because they understand one simple truth. Control breeds momentum. Momentum fuels confidence. And confidence creates clarity. So when Navy SEALs make their bed first thing in the morning, it's not about the sheets. It's about reclaiming agency. That single act says, I decide the pace today, not circumstance. One woman I worked with had spent years battling paralyzing anxiety. Each day, her mind ran faster than her feet ever could. She'd wake up already exhausted, already overwhelmed. Her first instinct was to scroll to numb her fear with distraction. But the more she consumed, the more powerless she felt. One day, she made a small shift. Instead of reaching for her phone, she reached for a glass of water. She sat in silence for 10 minutes, just her and her breath. No fixing, no planning, just being. She started writing a single sentence in a notebook. Today, I will lead my life, not chase it. That was it. A mantra, a reminder. 3 weeks later, something radical happened. She wasn't just less anxious. She was energized. Her team noticed she was more focused, more decisive. She started waking up earlier, eating better, even running again. Not because life had gotten easier, but because she had gotten stronger. And that strength, it began with those 10 quiet minutes. We underestimate the power of tiny beginnings. We think transformation requires upheaval. But the truth is, it starts in the smallest of spaces, in the quiet, before the noise. In the moment you decide to be deliberate instead of distracted. You don't need an hour-long morning routine filled with green juice, yoga, and journaling. You need ownership. You need to do one thing, just one that tells your mind, I am not at the mercy of this day. Drink a full glass of water. Stretch, pray, meditate, write down what matters most. Look out the window and remind yourself that the world can wait 5 minutes while you anchor yourself. Because when you control the start of your day, you control your direction. And when you control your direction, the world feels less like a storm and more like a challenge you're ready for. We live in a society obsessed with the hustle, the rush, the constant doing. But the irony is, the more we rush into our days, the more our days run us. The secret to progress is not speed, it's alignment. And alignment starts with awareness. Who are you when no one is texting you, emailing you, asking you for anything? That version of you, the quiet one, is where your power lives. The version of you that breathes before it reacts. That thinks before it replies. That leads rather than follows. Every morning gives you a choice. Will you create space or fill it? Will you act with intention or move in reaction? Will you claim the day or will it claim you? It's not about perfection. There will be mornings when you oversleep, when the kids are screaming, when life throws punches before you've had coffee. But even then, even in the chaos, you can take one deep breath and remember, this moment is mine. That breath is a reset button. That breath says, I may not control what happens, but I control who I am in the face of it. And that's the secret. That's what changes everything. Because your life isn't shaped by grand events, it's shaped by micro decisions repeated daily. And the first decision of your day, that's your blueprint. So tomorrow morning when your alarm rings, pause. Don't rush, don't grab the phone, don't dive into the noise. Instead, do something bold. Take control, create momentum. Lead your day before the world has a chance to. Because when you control your morning, you don't just feel better. You live better. Control your words, and you control your life. It's not a metaphor. It's not poetic fluff. It's truth. Most people don't realize that the words they choose are the architects of their experiences. We've been taught that language is a way to share what's happening, but it's far more than that. Language is how we shape what happens next. The way you speak about yourself, your circumstances, your future, it's like planting seeds. And those seeds grow into the very fabric of your life. Think about it. How many times have you heard someone say, I'm always tired, or nothing ever works out for me? And have you noticed how those very words become the script of their daily reality? It's not coincidence. It's not bad luck. It's reinforcement. What we say reinforces what we believe, and what we believe shapes what we see. Your brain is always listening, even when you're joking, even when you're being sarcastic. It doesn't have a sarcasm filter, it takes you at your word. So when you say, I'm just not creative, don't be surprised when ideas don't show up for you. When you say, I'm terrible with people, your social world starts to shrink without you realizing it. You've cast yourself in a role, and now you're playing the part beautifully. This isn't about fake positivity. It's not about chanting affirmations in the mirror and hoping life magically changes. It's about taking responsibility for the language you choose because that language creates your lens. A Harvard study once followed individuals over 10 years, tracking how their self-talk influenced their success. Those who consistently use constructive, optimistic language, not delusionally positive, but forward-focused, were not only more successful in their careers, but they reported deeper fulfillment and resilience. Their words shaped their resilience. Their ability to bounce back wasn't because they had fewer problems, but because they spoke differently about them. I remember a woman I met at a workshop, an elementary school teacher. Her days were long. Her resources were low. Her students came from challenging environments. Every time we spoke, she said the same phrase, I'm just surviving. That became her narrative. It colored everything. It defined her limits. Until one day, in a quiet moment, I asked, what if you changed it to, I'm learning to thrive? It seemed small. She laughed, but something clicked. She began using that phrase. Not because her job changed, not because the challenges disappeared, but because her identity began to shift. Within 6 months, she had proposed and launched an after-school mentoring program. She was promoted. More than that, she walked lighter. Same world. Different words, profoundly different outcome. We don't realize how often our words are forecasting devices. This week is going to be awful, someone says on a Monday. By Friday, they're proven right. Not because the week had to be awful, but because their brain filtered every experience through that expectation. On the flip side, think about those rare people who say, no matter what happens, I'm going to figure it out. Watch how life bends a little more in their favor. That's not magic. That's mindset, built brick by brick with language. Your words are your compass. They set direction. They define altitude. They tell your subconscious where to go and what to expect. If you constantly say, I'm overwhelmed, your brain responds by shutting down focus, by shrinking possibility. But when you say, I'm learning how to prioritize, your brain begins to look for solutions. You open a window instead of closing a door. You might be thinking, but I'm just being honest, I really am always late. I really do struggle with money. That may be your current truth, but it's not your identity. It's not your future. The difference between a fact and a forecast is one word: intention. Instead of, I'm always late, say, I'm working on showing up with more intention. It's subtle, but it's powerful. You haven't lied. You've just left space for change. Look at kids. A child praised for being smart might grow cautious, afraid of being wrong. But a child told, you work so hard, learns that effort is their identity. And that child grows into an adult who keeps climbing. Words matter. They plant ideas, and ideas become identities. This is as true in business as it is in relationships. A leader who says, we always fall short, creates a culture of limitation. But a leader who says, we're figuring out how to win, creates one of possibility. Same setbacks, different future. We're often more careful with the words we use with strangers than with the ones we use on ourselves. Think about that. You wouldn't walk up to someone and say, you're worthless, you're always a failure. But how often have you said that to yourself, even quietly? Your brain hears that. Your soul hears that. And it starts to shrink in response. You don't need to be delusional, you just need to be intentional. Speak the way you want to become. That's not arrogance, it's accountability. There's a difference between describing your life and designing it. Description uses the words of the past. Design uses the language of the future. When you say, this is who I am, be sure that you're not just repeating a wound. When you say, this is just how things are, ask yourself if that belief is serving you or stopping you. Because beliefs aren't bricks. They're doors. And you always have the key. Every word you speak is a vote. A vote for the future you're trying to create or the one you're trying to avoid. So if you want to change your life, start with your language. Pay attention to what you say after I am. Because I am is not just grammar. It's creation. I am tired becomes a sentence you serve time in. But I am learning to rest better becomes an invitation to change. Speak with purpose. Speak with belief. Speak as if your life is listening. Because it is. We live in a noisy world filled with messages about who we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to fear, how we're supposed to feel. But the most powerful voice is still the one inside your own head. Make it one that lifts you. Make it one that aligns with your values. Make it one that sets you free. Because in the end, the story you tell yourself becomes the story you live. Choose words that honor your journey. Choose words that serve your future. Choose words that shape a reality you're proud to live in. Control what you feed your mind. It's a simple sentence, almost too simple. But the truth it holds is deep and transformative. Because if there's one thing we underestimate more than anything else in our lives, it's the power of input. Not just what we put in our mouths, but what we allow into our minds, day after day, minute after minute. You can't plant roses and water them with poison. You can't build a castle and fill it with termites. You can't hope for peace while binging chaos. And yet so many of us live in contradiction. We say we want clarity, but we scroll through noise. We say we want courage, but we consume fear. We say we want to believe in ourselves, but surround ourselves with everything that convinces us we're not enough. There's a saying, you are what you eat, but that's only part of the picture. The full picture is this: you are what you consume, what you read, what you listen to, what you watch, what you let into your space when you're bored, tired, lonely, distracted. These aren't harmless pastimes, these are instructions. Every article, every post, every conversation is quietly shaping the narrative of your life. They're not just entertaining you, they're training you. They're teaching you what to fear, what to worship, what to chase, and what to expect from yourself. Let me tell you about someone I knew, a young entrepreneur, full of talent but slowly drowning in doubt. Every night he watched YouTube videos about millionaire success stories. At first, it was inspiring, but then it became toxic. The algorithm fed him more, faster, shinier, flashier versions of success. He watched other people's highlights while living in the behind the scenes of his own life. It didn't take long before the line between admiration and self-hate blurred. He stopped seeing what he was building and started seeing everything he hadn't achieved. He thought he had a strategy problem. He thought he needed to hustle harder, post more, sleep less. But the real problem, he was starving his mind of substance and feeding it fluff. Then one day, he made a decision, not a big one, not a dramatic one, but a real one. He unsubscribed from every channel that made him feel small. He deleted the apps that constantly distracted him. He began listening to business podcasts, reading biographies of people who had failed more than they'd succeeded, and started journaling his own journey. Not to post, not to share, but to understand himself. He replaced comparison with curiosity. In 90 days, everything changed. Not because he found some viral tactic or magic formula, because he found a new voice, his own. And that voice wasn't buried under noise anymore. He didn't just get clarity, he got clients. He didn't just get motivated, he got aligned. What we feed our minds matters more than we realize, because the mind is not a vault, it's a garden. And gardens don't bloom by accident. They flourish when nurtured with intention, when we pull the weeds, when we protect them from pests, when we don't let trash blow in from the neighbor's yard. Think about your daily mental diet. Think about the first thing you see when you wake up. Is it a notification pulling you into a world of urgency before your feet even hit the floor? Think about the background noise of your life. Is it music that lifts you or lyrics that numb you? Is it news that informs or headlines that inflame? We have this incredible technology in our hands, our phones, our feeds, our screen sand, yet instead of using them to build, we often use them to bruise. Not intentionally, but habitually, subtly, slowly. Negativity doesn't knock down the door, it seeps in through the cracks. A sarcastic comment here, a viral tweet drenched in outrage there, a friend who only calls to complain. And before we know it, our inner world is echoing the noise of the outer world. We become restless, reactive, distracted, not because of who we are, but because of what we've allowed in. If you want to change your life, start with your inputs. Don't just declutter your space. Declutter your mind. Audit your attention like your future depends on it, because it does. Choose what you read. Choose who you follow. Choose the music that plays while you work. Choose the voices you invite into your car, your office, your home. Choose the kind of silence you sit in. Because silence too can be sacred when it's not constantly invaded. And know this, you don't need a massive overhaul to see massive change. Start with one source, one shift, one decision. Replace 1 hour of scrolling with 30 minutes of reading. Swap one sarcastic conversation for one honest one. Trade gossip for gratitude. Trade fear for facts. Trade noise for reflection. The stories we tell ourselves shape the lives we live, and the stories we believe are often rooted in the stories we consume. If you feed your mind garbage, don't be surprised when it struggles to produce gold. If you flood it with distractions, don't be surprised when focus feels impossible. But the opposite is also true. When you feed your mind with truth, with inspiration, with depth, with challenge, with hope, your mind responds. It expands, it sharpens, it strengthens. The most successful people in the world aren't just disciplined with their time. They're disciplined with their minds. They guard their inputs like a farmer guards seeds. Because they know that what grows tomorrow depends on what they sow today. You don't need more motivation. You don't need a new goal. You need new nutrients. You need to stop feeding your doubt and start feeding your dreams. Because in the end, the greatest gift you can give yourself is not just control of your time, your habits, or your schedule. It's control of your attention. Control of what enters and stays in your mind. Because that's the soil of everything else. So ask yourself, what am I planting? What am I watering? What am I letting take root in the most powerful space I own? And if the answer doesn't serve your future, today is the day to choose something better. Most people think transformation begins with a new routine, a new job, or a fresh goal. But if we look deeper beneath the surface level strategies and motivational quotes, it becomes clear that the fastest way to change isn't by simply doing more or thinking differently. It's by aligning yourself with people who are already living at the level you aspire to. That's the lever. That's the catalyst. Because the company you keep doesn't just reflect who you are, it shapes who you become. We don't rise to the level of our dreams. We fall to the level of our surroundings. That's not pessimism, it's reality. Human beings are wired to adapt. We conform, we mirror. We absorb the language, energy, and expectations of the people closest to us. So if we constantly find ourselves in environments that celebrate mediocrity, gossip, or scarcity, it's only a matter of time before our standards quietly begin to slip. And we might not even notice it happening. Because it's slow, it's subtle, and it's familiar. Think of a thermostat. When you set the temperature in a room, The thermostat will automatically adjust the heating or cooling to maintain that level. People work the same way. Your environment sets the emotional and behavioral temperature of your life. You might want to operate at 75 degrees optimistic, focused, disciplined, but if your environment is stuck at 60 degrees, you'll eventually get cold. And no matter how many podcasts you listen to or books you read, you'll keep slipping back to the level your environment is set at until you change the setting. I once met a young man, ambitious, eager, and deeply frustrated. He said to me, "I feel like I'm stuck. I'm trying to grow, but no one around me gets it." I asked him a simple question. "Who are you spending the most time with?" He paused, looked down, and said, "Honestly, people who are fine staying the same." That moment was a mirror, not a judgment, just a realization. He didn't throw away his friendships or abandon people. He simply expanded his circle. He started going to local meetups with people who were building businesses. He joined a mastermind group that met every Thursday. They were dreamers, doers, and problem solvers. Within 6 months, his entire trajectory changed. Not because he suddenly became smarter, but because he started breathing different air. His habits changed, his income changed, his energy changed, and most importantly, his identity changed. He began to believe he could be more because now he saw what more looked like in real life. This is the power of proximity. If you spend enough time with high performers, you'll start thinking differently without even realizing it. You'll catch yourself waking up earlier, reading more, complaining less, taking more risks, asking better questions, not because someone told you to, but because you're in an environment where that behavior is normal, expected, reinforced. Environment is never neutral. It's always influencing you. Every room you walk into is either pulling you forward or holding you back. It's either reinforcing the person you're becoming or protecting the version of you that you've outgrown. There is no standing still, no middle ground. And that's why auditing your circle isn't selfish, it's essential. Now, this doesn't mean you should cut people off or burn bridges. That's not leadership. That's reaction. The goal is not to leave people behind, but to find people who pull you forward. People who challenge you not to prove you wrong, but to help you grow. People who celebrate your progress, not just your comfort. People who talk about ideas more than they talk about people. And sometimes that means making uncomfortable choices. It might mean spending less time with someone you love because you know their influence is keeping you small. It might mean risking misunderstanding or judgment because you're choosing a path they don't yet understand. But remember, your life is not a democracy. You don't need a vote to rise, you just need courage. There's an old saying, "Show me your friends and I'll show you your future." It's more than a quote, it's a mirror. If you're constantly around people who normalize distraction, you'll become distracted. If you're surrounded by those who thrive on conflict, you'll attract chaos. But if your closest relationships are with people who live intentionally, dream boldly, and act consistent, you'll rise with them. Change doesn't always require intensity. Sometimes it just requires intention. Choosing who you text back, who you have lunch with, whose advice you listen to, who you follow on social media. Every one of those decisions is a vote for your future. 1 degree of separation can become 100 degrees of transformation. We live in a world where noise is everywhere, but clarity lives in connection. And the fastest way to find that clarity is by standing in the company of those who remind you of who you're capable of becoming. People who don't just see your potential, but speak to it daily. People who normalize ambition, generosity, and discipline. People who remind you that fear is not a stop sign and failure is not the end. It's not about being the smartest in the room. It's about being in a room that makes you want to grow. Where discomfort becomes fuel, not fear. Where accountability is a gift, not a punishment. Where dreaming big isn't weird, it's welcomed. Because in that room, you'll find not only your next step, but your future self. And here's the beautiful part. When you level up your circle, you don't just change your life, you change theirs. You become the example. You show what's possible. You give permission for others to rise. Because the most powerful influence you can ever have isn't just to climb, it's to lift as you rise. You don't need to wait for a better opportunity or more motivation. You just need better alignment. Not with perfection, but with progress, with people who live with purpose, who walk with integrity, who choose growth, not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. So audit your circle, not to judge, but to align, because in the end, transformation is not a solo journey, it's a shared experience. And when you find the right people, the ones who make you forget who you were and fall in love with who you're becoming, you'll realize that the real shift didn't come from a goal, a book, or a strategy. It came from choosing the company that made you feel unstoppable. Life has a habit of rewriting our plans without permission. It doesn't ask us if we're ready. It doesn't wait for us to catch our breath. It comes fast, hard, and often without warning. One moment, we're cruising forward, convinced we know what's coming next, and then boom, a phone call, a diagnosis, a downturn, a betrayal. Suddenly, the script changes. And in that moment, we're confronted with something deeper than the event itself. We're faced with a decision: how will I respond? This is where true power lives, not in what happens, but in how we respond to what happens. You've probably heard it said that life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. But this isn't about reaction, it's about response. Because reaction is instinctual, it's knee-jerk, it's automatic. But response, that's intentional, that's conscious. That's where growth begins. There's a small sacred space between what happens to us and how we choose to meet it. And while that space may be only a breath long, it holds the potential to reshape everything. This is where transformation takes root, not in avoidance, not in denial, but in that pause, in that breath, in that split second where you decide whether you let the moment shape you or you'll rise to shape it. Think about the stories we tell ourselves. The man who loses his job and becomes bitter, resentful, hopeless, she's not wrong for feeling that way. Pain is real, fear is valid. But then there's the other man who loses his job too, but chooses to see it as a doorway, not a dead end. He builds something, he reinvents himself, same event, different story. One chooses defeat, the other chooses discovery. That choice is everything. And it doesn't require perfection. It doesn't mean pretending everything's fine when it's not. It means being honest about the pain while refusing to be owned by it. It's the difference between sinking into circumstances and stepping into character. Because life will throw storms, but how you navigate them determines whether you emerge stronger or smaller. There's a man who understood this better than most, Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist, a survivor of the Holocaust. He endured horrors most of us can't begin to imagine. And in that darkness, he found light not around him, but within him. He said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing. The last of the human freedom stow, choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." That's not just a quote. That's a declaration of ownership. That's a man who lost everything except himself. And that's the invitation life gives to all of us. To claim the one thing no one can take a response. We may not control the storm, but we always control the sail. We may not write every chapter, but we get to decide how we show up on the page. It's not about always being positive. It's about being responsible, not in the sense of blame, but in the sense of ownership. The kind of responsibility that says, this isn't my fault, but it is my future. That's the question we must ask in the face of challenge. What response honors my future, not just my feelings? Because feelings are fleeting, they rise like waves, they crash like thunder, and they pass. But the decisions we make in those moments leave footprints that last. So when pain knocks on your door, when life interrupts your carefully drawn plans, pause, don't react, respond. Ask yourself, who do I want to become because of this? Not in spite of it, but because of it. Every challenge you face holds within it the seed of a greater version of you. But that seed only grows if you water it with the right response. With courage, with humility, with resilience, with grace. Think of the times in your life that changed you. The hard ones, the heartbreaks, the failures, the losses. Now think about who you became after them. Not just what you learned, but how you grew. You didn't choose those moments, but you chose your way through them. And that choice made you who you are today. There's a kind of quiet strength in people who have learned to respond rather than react. You see it in their eyes. They don't flinch at hardship. They don't run from discomfort. They've developed an inner stillness that says, I can't control everything, but I can control me. And that self-control, that's power. That's peace. That's freedom. And this is where we build something remarkable now, by avoiding hardship, but by using it, by meeting it with intention, by refusing to let it define us and instead allowing it to refine us. The truth is, the world doesn't need more people who have easy lives. It needs more people who know how to respond well to hard ones. People who can lead with compassion in the middle of chaos. People who can speak life in the middle of loss. People who can build bridges in the middle of brokenness. And that begins with the way you respond. So the next time life doesn't go your way, and there will be a next time pause, take a breath, step into that space between what happened and what you do next, and ask, what would the strongest, wisest, most future-focused version of me choose right now? You are not defined by what happens to you. You are defined by how you respond. And that response, when chosen with intention, becomes the most powerful story you'll ever write. Control your morning. Control your words. Control your inputs. Control your circle. Control your responses. You don't have to wait for next month, or the perfect opportunity, or someone else's permission. You already have everything you need right now to begin. Transformation isn't about changing everything at once. It's about owning something and watching everything shift from there. And once you take that control, you'll realize you were never stuck. You were just waiting to start.